We're here in Queens, looking at the Nas mural, an honor dedicated to what many consider the greatest artist in hip-hop history. And today, we're going to take a walk to where Nas and many other famous hip-hop artists from the early days grew up, the Queensbridge projects. Queensbridge projects occupy 6 city blocks in the neighborhood of Long Island City in Queens. They were built in 1939, and with 3,100 apartments and 7,000 residents, they are currently the biggest public housing project in not just New York, not just the US, but in all of the Americas, North and South. There are some projects in China and Korea that have more, but these projects have been the #1 largest projects in the US since 2011, when both Chicago's Robert Taylor and Cabrini Green were demolished. Just quite impressive, given that the buildings are only 6 stories high, so it's not a function of floors or height. We're currently walking through the northeast corner of the 6 different blocks. This one has a playground in the middle. 4 of the 6 have basketball courts, and 1 has a community center. Queensbridge is located adjacent to the East River, close to the 59th Street Queensboro Bridge, now known as the Ed Koch Bridge. And these projects have a long history with a lot of talent, and a lot of famous people have come out of these projects. We already briefly touched on Nas, considered by many the greatest, and considered by practically all one of the 3 to 4 greatest hip-hop artists of all time. His career effectively started with his Illmatic album in 1994. Another 90s duo of rappers that came from here was Mobb Deep. But those weren't actually the first well-known artists to come out of these projects. The history really goes back to the early days of rap and hip-hop in the mid-'80s. In 1985, there was a group called the Juice Crew, led by DJ Marley Marl. And he assembled a team of rappers who are primarily from these same Queensbridge projects where he grew up. One of them was the name of MC Shan, and together they made a song called The Bridge, which really put Queensbridge on the map from a hip-hop's point of view. But it also led to what they call the Bridge Wars. In the song, The Bridge, there's a reference that some could interpret as saying that hip-hop originated in these very projects. Well, there was a young up-and-coming artist from the Bronx, KRS-One, part of Boogie Down Productions, who took exception to that claim, since it's well known that the Bronx in the 1970s was the true birthplace of hip-hop. So he made a answer song called The South Bronx, that kind of was what we call a diss track, ripping on MC Shan and Marley Marl, and frankly the whole borough of Queens along with Queensbridge. And it went back and forth. There was quite a few diss tracks from both sides, culminating in one called The Bridge Is Over by KRS-One. I'm from the Bronx, and having witnessed it, I kind of think Boogie Down Productions in the Bronx got the better of it, but I could be biased. I shouldn't say that too loud around here, because these projects indeed contributed a great deal to the history of the early days of hip-hop. The 6 blocks are divided into north and south. We're now at the southeast corner, and this is actually the block that Nas himself grew up in. He was born in 1974 and I believe lived here for the first 20 years of his life. As far as housing projects go, it's quite safe here. It's considered to be low crime. Like everywhere in New York, it had its day back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But during this century, it's considered a very safe part of New York. Here's one of the 4 basketball courts located in these projects. Officially, it's known as the Queensbridge Houses. In front of me, the building 41-07 is the building where Nas grew up. Now, the bridge wars that took place starting with the bridge in 1985 and the answer tracks in 86 and 87 from Boogie Down Productions weren't the first set of war or diss tracks that came in the rap world involving artists from the Queensbridge projects. Even a year before that, in 1984, there was a group from Brooklyn called U2FO. They made a song called Roxanne, Roxanne. For all you younger listeners, you may not have heard this, as it doesn't get a lot of airplay on your typical 80s radio station, but back in the day, in 84, early 85, in New York particularly, you couldn't not hear this song. It was played all the time. It's a cute song. 3 guys rapping about a hot girl they encounter, and each one of them tries to make their play and gets shot down, metaphorically speaking. Well, there was a young teenage girl, 14 years old, that lived in these projects and knew Marley Marl, and he recognized her talent and asked her to put together an answer to that Roxanne song from those 3 guys in Brooklyn. And her name is Roxanne Shante. That's actually a stage name. Her real first name is a different name, but she was able to put together something reportedly in just 7 minutes called Roxanne's Revenge, where she gives her reasons for why these 3 guys' rap was so weak and they weren't worthy of her. Well, this started a whole war of songs in 1985. Another female artist tabbed herself as the real Roxanne and dissed both the guys and Roxanne Shante. And there was others, and in some there was something like 30 different tracks related to Roxanne. In fact, some of the later tracks were to stop making songs about Roxanne. But for those of you who haven't heard it, check it out. Kind of interesting saga. Again, involving an artist from Queensbridge. But those are, I'm naming the most famous hip hop artists. There's others. Craig G, the poet, and too many to name that have come out of these projects. And from a per capita point of view, they've clearly contributed more hip hop artists than any other neighborhood in the world. We're going down 41st, right through the heart, the center of the projects. Here's the community center, the Jacob Riis Settlement House. Those of you who know New York City history know Jacob Riis from the late 1800s was the man who exposed many of the terrible living conditions in the Lower East Side. And this center helps new immigrants who may not be fluent in the language to adjust to living in New York. Right here in the middle of Queensbridge, you have a grocery store, and many other stores on this center street going through the community. Now, it's not only hip hop that's benefited from the talent that comes out of these Queensbridge houses, but also the NBA. A lot of great basketball players have come out of Queensbridge. There's Ronnie Williams from the late 70s, Vern Fleming, who was on the 1984 Olympic team and played for the Indiana Pacers, but probably most notably, most famous NBA player who comes from this very block that we're walking to right now is Ron Artest, also known as Meta World Peace. So Artest played his college ball at St. John's right here in Queens. Then went on to the NBA. He played for various teams. He was initially drafted by the Chicago Bulls, but is probably most well known for his time with the Indiana Pacers, where he was involved in the malicious Malice in the Palace. Then he went on to the Los Angeles Lakers and earned himself a ring as NBA champion in 2010. Interestingly, of the 6 blocks, 4 of which have basketball courts, Artest's block did not. So he had to walk at least a block to play pickup games when he was young. It is December. It's about 35 degrees, so not a whole lot of people are out right now. Now we're going to start heading our way towards the East River and Queensbridge Park, adjacent to these houses. Up ahead, you can see the Queensboro Bridge that connects Queens with both Roosevelt Island and Manhattan. And I only named 3, but there have been 10 to 12 different NBA players that have come from here in Queensbridge. So this practice makes perfect, because having the 4 courts in such near proximity probably helped in that regard. Forgot to mention that Artest, in addition to being the most famous NBA player from Queensbridge, was himself a rapper. And he was known as, but he's not bad. If you ever want to check out some of his tracks, he's got pretty good flow, especially given it's not his primary job. Up ahead is the Con Edison Energy Facility, just north of Queensbridge Park that we just entered. And up here now we have a much clearer view of the Ed Koch, aka 59th Street, aka Queensboro Bridge. Several different baseball fields here. Don't know if any Major League Baseball players have come out of Queensbridge, but if you do know of any, please hit me in the comments. You can get here at Queensbridge by taking the 7 train. Either the closest stop would be on 21st Street in Queens Plaza, but there's also the Queensboro Long Island City stop that's just a few blocks away. Directly across this East Canal of the East River is Roosevelt Island, with just beyond that, with many buildings in sight, the island of Manhattan. If you look further south, it's beyond the southern tip of Roosevelt Island, so you can see a straight shot view of Midtown Manhattan. There is also another bridge that goes from a further north point in Roosevelt Island over to Queens. Actually, some ducks swimming in the river. Seems too cold for all that. All right, that's our tour through Queensbridge projects in the Queensbridge Park. This is the Urban Walker. Please like, please subscribe. Until the next walk, see ya.